Thank you. will never, never, never know me.
Okay, wonderful. Good morning to everybody who's ready in this room. I hope that you slept well. I hope that we're going to have a lovely second day of the conference. Good job. G20 presidents.
Yeah. Hello, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Yeah.
You're awake? Okay. Are you awake? I want a yes. Yes. Thank you. Can I have some, oh yes, from the back as well? Are you awake? Or sort of, all right. I hope that you're going to get a bit more awake when Tim kicks into action, and we're going to have a review of yesterday. So thank you very much for having actually crawled out of bed and probably already done the first report before you came here. This is sort of the last third of the day and a half that we spent together as the EU Western Balkan Media Days. So it's going to be the last round of the marathon, but of course your marathon, ladies and gentlemen, is going to continue. On the way to the content, I would just like to remind you that whatever happens, you need to find your way to the airport back the way that you came here, i.e. if transport was organized for you when you came here, you're going to be on that sort of transport again. If you did that on your own, you are on your own also on the way back. And of course, we hope that at lunchtime you travel home safely or stay in Skopje if Skopje is your home. Now, we've had somebody working away all the way of the conference, and I'm just going to walk over to Charlotte, and Charlotte is our graphic recorder. In other words, she is taking notes of what is happening here in this room, and you see there's still some space left. Now, Charlotte, you were already here last year, or you were in Tirana last year. What is outstanding, or what is shown especially on your graphic recording? I mean, I yesterday pointed out to the truth that is being shot, but what else is outstanding in your perception?
Well, I think there's a whole story here that we're talking about protecting and supporting journalists, this central importance of media freedom at the core of everything. And we've talked very much about how we create the environment, how we are able to protect and support journalists from the real threats that they are facing every day. And that moves from a physical threat to people's lives and their working conditions through to the fake news that is very prevalent. And we've talked about how we can support with media literacy, what the government's role is, what the journalist's role is, how we can support each other with professional standards of self-regulation, and then moving through to new business models to really approach this world that is changing so fast for us. And then at the end of yesterday, we had these wonderful lightning talks and this creative display. So the picture is really trying to take through the narrative of all that we've discussed today. And as you said, we will be including the workshops and the recommendations in the last part of the picture.
So that's Tim's job, of course, to take it away. And I'm not quite sure whether our cameraman can focus in on this amazing performance that we had last night as the finish off here in this room. The dance, the ballet, the choreography, the observation that sometimes we just need to shift our perception of what is disabled and what is able-bodied, and how inclusion can work and can not work. Now, I'm sorry, somehow I said Charlotte. Of course, it's Caroline. We all know that, so it's Caroline. And if you want to see a bit more, of course, there is a homepage where you can see Caroline's work. Tonight, you're going to be back in London, so everybody else can look. And also, for everything else, may I encourage you to continue Twittering as much as you have done yesterday. Well, and with that, I'm just going to move back up on stage in order to invite my esteemed colleague Tim Judah to come up here to take it away, because Tim, come up whilst I'm chatting. We've had these workshops, and I happen to be in the one on the business models, and I can tell you what, it was hot. not only because of the discussions, but because I think 60 people fitted into the room, which was normally designed for 30, which means that how do you set up a working, a viable business proposition in this region is a very, very hot topic. Now, you have all the experts here. They've been working very hard, and good luck for the next hour and a half.
Okay. And thank you very much for being here. I'm glad that there's so many people, especially after last night's party. Well, let's get on with it. I've seen two of you. Milica Stojanovic, please come up. Center for Investigative Journalism. Sashka Svetkovska, where are you? Hello? Hello? Calling Sashka. She's on the way, okay. She's from the hopefully she's investigating something along the way, but won't be too long. And then Krenagashi, please come up. Okay, well, are you sure she's on the way? Do you know that she's on the way for sure? Okay, fine. Okay, well, you're not here to listen to me. Milica, how did it go yesterday? Over to you.
I think it was very useful conversation because there was people from media, there was people from the academic community. Probably they should be among panelists. That's for the next year if this topic was again. But yeah, I think it was very useful communication and talking there.
Okay, well, please tell us. Tell us your conclusions then.
So we agreed that the academic education is not enough for our media today. And the first thing that we agreed that faculties and universities need to actually increasing critical thinking of journalists, which would actually at some point bring us to the media literacy. The second thing is that it would be very useful if it is possible to actually increase the ties between formal and informal education. And the most important thing is to make more time and space during the faculty for professional work of a journalist. We all agreed that we have a problem there because the media landscape is not it's not adjusted for that because there is only a few media in our countries that you can actually send journalists to learn something. So it would be actually very useful if it's possible to increase faculties themselves to make content. So you have university radio, university TV show, website or whatever, so the students can actually do a real journalistic job while they are on their academic years. And about informal education, which is of course very important too, we agreed that those trainings need to be adjusted to actual gaps that all the journalists have after the faculty. But the focus needs to be on quality over the quantity. So you actually need the very good assessment of the gaps, but also very good assessment of the impact. So what were the real goal of all these trainings? And besides to the skills, those training needs to be actually adjusted to our journalistic work days and habits and our tasks in our newsroom. So that would basically be it.
Okay, I mean, one of the things that we've learned from some of the colleagues, I mean, I'm not talking about necessarily yesterday, but in my years of knowing your colleagues, is that there's increasing frustration that sometimes investigative reporting in Serbia and parts of the rest of the region produces really amazing stuff, published, and then nothing much happens, and it just gets ignored. Do you have that problem?
Yes, we have that problem, but that's I don't know if I said that is the next step or that is a previous step with the education, because of course beside the education you actually need to create space from all those people do they actually have where to go to work. And if you, for example, which is kindly happened now in Serbia, if you are trying to bring the whole concept of transparency back to, I don't know, 1970, those people, no matter how much we taught them, they don't have space where to apply the things that we actually taught them. So yeah, the space for working is a big deal for us. It's a big problem.
Okay, fine. Well, Krena, why don't you kind of resume and tell us your conclusions.
Thanks, Tim. We had quite a vivid discussion in the third panel because we were tasked to discuss the public broadcasting services and the regional cooperation between the independent media. I've prepared a sort of a triple presentation, starting with the stating the obvious, because that's what we've talked, sort of 3 layers to the discussion, and then a bit delving on the conceptual and ideas, how to move forward, and then I'll have some 5 rather concrete recommendations, mainly to the Commission, but also to the public broadcasters in the region. So let's start with the obvious. The group was echoing that public broadcasting services are paramount to democratic consolidation, and that true public media is not only important for social developments, but also can play an important role to support the private media and the private media development. And then the second obvious statement is that the public broadcasters in the Western Balkans are operating like and being perceived by the public as state televisions and state machineries rather than as public institutions. And here the main obstacle to public broadcasting services remains the political interference and political control over steering boards, executive directors, and editors as well. Whereas there's already some cooperation between public broadcasters in the region, such cooperation is rather limited to exchange of news of mainly political nature. And then cooperation between the private media in the region is also low and still, again, mainly around news and the political news. Now, let me walk you through some of the discussion we had in terms of concepts and how to move forward. Well, public broadcasters are a European concept. You don't see them, everywhere in the world. And political control that the parliaments and governments exercise sometimes over the executives in the Western Europe are not manifested in the same fashion in Western Balkans, because the editorial independence is often infringed. And it becomes even worse in this region because politicians in the Western Balkans are usually having this zero-sum approach to politics, and that zero-sum approach to politics is also can be seen as a zero-sum approach to controlling public broadcasters. Most of the reforms in the public broadcasters are stagnating due to lack of political will to actually let these public broadcasters be free. Platforms of cooperation between independent media and the public broadcasters already exist, but they are heavily dependent on the interest of the specified public and the agenda setting, which is then again controlled by the politician. And now I'll move to the sort of 5 recommendations that we've put together. The Commission could be of a great assistance when it comes to providing blueprints for legislation, enacting legislation on public broadcasting service. Whereas the Commission has been involved in the legislative processes, and the EU's Audiovisual Media Services Directive is somehow in play, the region needs more specific guidance rather than that provided by the EU's audiovisual media services. The second is that the Commission should have a clear sense when it comes to political interference over public broadcasters. Sometimes the feeling is that the stances of the Commission are not as harsh and not as direct over political interference in the media as they would be, for example, over political interference on elections or market regulatory authorities. So this is the impression. The third is that the Commission should consider supporting public broadcasters in opening and maintaining regional correspondence in the Western Balkans. The public broadcasters are still seen as the only media that can actually afford to have these regional correspondence offices, which would then boost not only cooperation between public broadcasters, but also the private media who could use the same network. We've talked a bit about the examples such as the Franco-German cooperation over Arte production, and we thought that it would be a good idea that could be adopted to the Western Balkans, and the EU can play an important role here, whereby encouraging public broadcasters from 2 or more countries to produce joint production and then systemize them in different languages throughout the region. I believe that such collaborative projects could then in turn boost the bottom-up creativity in the region, sort of leave more room for innovation, for bottom-up production of material, which is not necessarily news and which is not necessarily political news, because everyone in our group kind of agreed that the exchange of other journalistic material is sometimes as crucial, important as the news would be.
Okay, I mean, when it comes to these collaborative projects, or basically things which broadcast to people in the different countries, I mean, I know that you in Kosovo and Albania are kind of slightly apart from this, but there are two broadcasters which are doing that already, which is N1 and Al Jazeera Balkans. I mean, do you know how they've been doing? How much of an impact that they've had? Have they been successful? Do you know?
Well, we've talked a bit about it, and none of the initiatives are sort of comprehensively covering the region.
Right.
So that becomes the very first point. As an Albanian from Kosovo, access to Al Jazeera Balkans or N1 is really not as easy as it would be for sort of rather the Serbian or the.
Do you mean access language-wise, or do you mean that technically?
Language-wise.
Okay, but technically you can get them, isn't it? Okay, all right. Okay, well, you've arrived just on time, Sashka, so over to you. Perhaps you can tell us the conclusions from what you learned yesterday. You're from the investigative reporting lab, so over to you.
Okay, hi, sorry I'm late. Huge traffic, many international guests, so we are dealing with the closed streets every day. It was a tough panel, and the challenges were as big as last year, but the circumstances and the current conditions are quite different. And they are suggesting that the new approach that the Commission should take while designing the programs for helping media and assisting media cannot quite be framed as a business model, like a pure business model, given the key priorities of the European institution, including the European Council, the European Commission, and every other EU institution for the Western Balkans, is the strategy suggests that we have serious problems within the business environment that are a product of corruption, organized crime, and distort institutions that do not perform the rule of law. And of course, protection of fundamental rights. Given this, the European Commission should think about supporting media driven by integrity, journalism, professional journalism that deals with investigative reporting and critical reporting, but the Commission must support content. We cannot only rely on pure business models in a business environment like this. I mean, look what's happening in Macedonia, look what's happening everywhere in the region. This is not quite the business that would like to engage with us or that we would like to engage with them at the end. So the corruption is a huge problem, and you guys must support us. We must produce content. We must be present. There is a problem of the propaganda. For example, Viktor Orban spends more than €1 billion per year on propaganda. And they produce content. Sputnik does the same. We don't even know how they spend, but they obviously do spend a lot. So there is the concept of media literacy, and we all agree that it's important. But no matter how much we teach people what is wrong, what is true, what is untrue, what is disinformation, how they can spot it, if we don't expose the citizens to content, to real journalism, if we do not produce, not just as them, more than them, then, I mean, I'm sorry, but nothing will be worthy, and I don't see a bright future here. So yes, everybody on our panel agreed that nobody is against developing any models of sustainability, but the current conditions are suggesting that these models should be us hoping that in the future the citizens would be our buyers, and the demand for free press will come from them again. On the other hand, you guys will support a little bit more content, and we will also work to develop some new innovative business model ideas that will rely solely to the citizens as our buyers until we fix things. And we said those three things: rule of law, organized crime and corruption, and protection of fundamental rights. Thank you.
Could you just be a bit more specific when you're saying that you would like support from the Commission? I mean, what exactly do you want them to do?
For example, in Macedonia, there are many surveys done by the civil society organizations that are saying that the representation of investigative reporting, for example, and critical reporting in the media overall is less than 1%. And even in this 1%, we cannot really say that all of this is really critical, analytical, and investigative reporting. And that's for a start. Then, okay, business environment, that sounds good. We want to develop models, you know. But professional journalism, especially in environments like the Western Balkans, when institutions are so weak, and that affects the business climate. You know, you also need a proper business climate and a proper media to develop any successful business models.
No, but you said that the Commission should do more, but I'm just saying, well, the Commissioner is there. Tell him what he should do.
Well, Commissioner, yes, I've told him. Support more content, not just trainings. I mean, it's cool. We love the trainings, and we want to go there. And, but we do, journalists should be trained in the newsroom. And we don't have reporters anymore. Nobody want to do this job. And, I mean, and I understand them, but we need people. We need to train the future media leaders. And the only way to do it is in the newsroom. And the only way to do it in the newsroom is if we can do our job. And that means producing content. That means exposing citizens to real journalism.
Now, I understand that, but you're asking them
so
what,
we
to
fight
provide the money,
propaganda
or what?
on one hand.
What,
yes,
just saying, give us the money, or what are you asking exactly? No, that's the
well,
question.
yes. Well, yeah.
Okay.
Let's be.
Okay.
Okay, if you want me to put it this way, yes, Commissioner, give us the money and you'll see it will be worth it. I'm promising you. It would be the greatest investment, trust me.
Well, I don't know if you, I was going to throw it open, but I don't know if you would like to be the first to respond. Would you like to say something there, or are you going to talk later on? Would you like to say something now to respond? No? Okay, fine. Okay, well, we're going to sort of throw it open now for questions and answers. A bit like yesterday, don't forget the Commissioner is here, so whatever you say, that he's going to be absorbing that and listening to it, even if you're not addressing him directly. Well, let's kick off. Who'd like to start? Okay, the gentleman over there. Have we got the microphones? Somebody got the microphones? Microphones? Okay, maybe you can take this. Hold on a second, let me see if I can get this one working. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. I don't think this is working, actually. Hang on.
I'm not going to go up.
No, I'm not sure. Is it working, the microphone? Oh, have you got one there that's working? Great. Perhaps.
Number one.
Test.
Yeah,
working,
okay. Just, please tell us who you
yeah.
are.
My name is Dejan Šejnović. I'm a journalist from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm working at the daily newspaper Nezavisne novine. So my question would be, I listened carefully to yesterday's debate, and our panel was very interesting, but there's kind of question that I was kind of always wanted to ask, and something that was looming in my head is, all these panels and all these discussions somehow propose that truth is already there. So the truth is there, and now we need to figure out how the journalists, the politicians, the European Commission, everybody gets that truth out to the people. But to me it seems, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, maybe you will correct me if I'm wrong, but to me it seems that the concept of truth is really attacked in the recent years. Now we have this famous coined word, alternative facts. So everybody is entitled to their own truth. So how do we, as journalists, what is the truth? Is the truth, or is it now really subjective? So in my country, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's famously we have three truths. You know, it's very difficult for journalists to put the truth out. And as you, Commissioner, said yesterday, when you talk to our politicians, you don't know what party, what ideological sphere, are they left, are they conservative, because they have their truths which are completely disconnected to what are real problems. So all these panels are really, really interesting and nice and very useful, but I would really like to have debate about what is the truth and how do we save the truth in order to be able to have these debates about how do we reach the audience with the truth. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I suspect that's going to be like a whole panel in itself. What is the truth? I mean, that's almost a kind of philosophical question. Okay.
It's not philosophical, it's really real.
All right, there's a lady over there. Let's do 3 questions. A lady over there. No.
Number six. Right. Dani Celic, Ethical Journalism Network. Maybe I can summarize or help my colleague Dan. Maybe if we switch our debate from truth or business models onto journalism as public good. My conclusion from the grand panel yesterday and the panel on business models, sustainable business models, is that this event is very much corporate-like towards business-orientated, where we can sell what can buy us kind of discussion. And we from Ethical Journalism Network would like to switch on to considering what is it that we as journalists can do, and since Commissioner is here, what is him as a European Commissioner can do in his conversation with politicians of the Balkans. Because as Dan said, it seems that it's very difficult for truth to come out in the countries of Western Balkans. And it's not only because we don't have sustainable business models, but because my colleagues work under pressures and because we kind of need more mechanisms for good governance and ethical models.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Third one, lady just over there.
Thank you. My name is Ellie Howard. I work for BBC Media Action. I just wanted to add to what my colleague Sashka Svetowska said, which is producing content. The newsroom is very important, but it's also important to have good newsrooms, good integrated newsrooms with proper workflows, with multi-skilling and so on. So that's something that the Commission might consider for the Western Balkans. Thank you.
Sorry, before you, why would that be a Commission job? I mean, it's not their job to set up.
No, they wouldn't run the newsroom.
What would they suppose? But what do you mean by that in real life?
What I mean is that some of the national broadcasters and also selected commercial broadcasters who want to have proper news and current affairs would benefit from money and from experience to be able to have the integrated newsroom which will allow them to produce the content that Sashka was referring to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to do 3 and 3. So, to come back on that, 2 of those seem to be more like comments than questions, and then there's the big question of truth. As a Bosnian colleague said, it's like, most Bosnians or Bosnians in general are in 3 minds about everything. But it's not unique to Bosnia. I suppose the same is true in Belgium. It's true in Kosovo. It's not so unusual. But who would like to pick up that question of truth in media? Oh, good, great. Well, you go first.
Well, that's why we said content. Because we are exposed to lies and disinformation, and the amount of content. I mean, daily in Macedonia, for example, the Macedonian most visited website is Time MK, which is a news aggregator. And if you open that website, you'll see that fake news is ruling. Okay, they are ruling the media space. And how can we expose the truth if there is only lies and half lies, half truths on the internet and everywhere in media? How can we do that? So, yes, truth matters, but it takes time to reveal the truth. It takes real journalistic hard work, and it takes content. Citizens need to know the truth, but they cannot do it if they are not exposed to any kind of truth. And disinformation, what disinformation does is distrust. People don't trust us. When they don't trust us, Commissioner, then they will distrust the institution. Then they won't trust you. So, it's a joint job. We should help the citizens to be exposed to quality content. That's how they will be exposed to the truth. And when we will prevail, then the trust in media and trust in institution will slowly, I hope, get back.
Okay, Krona, do you want to pick up on that?
Just briefly, I mean, I'm perplexed by the question. As a former journalist and now an academic, you know, I think that the idea is not to believe anymore that there is one and unified truth, but as journalists to try and contest that truth and report it from as many angles as possible until we eventually get it to the, you know, perceive truth as an ideal state that you can never reach, but then try to get, you know, as close to it as possible. And that's basically what nowadays journalism is, more or less.
Do you want to pick up on that? Or no, not particularly. Yeah, go ahead.
But I think that my first point today was that if you teach a journalist and if you teach them how to, you know, the journalist first has to be a person who can question everything and who can go beyond the official information, because also yesterday here was from the audience one good remark about, you know, the fake news, and that remark was you have to consider our governments as a potential source of fake news also, and you have to train journalists to actually go beyond the propaganda and beyond the official information, so he can expose, so he can give the truth to his audience. So I think that if we also teach our journalists in the faculty on the trainings in the newsrooms how to actually question everything, we will eventually come to the point that we actually can come to the truth as nearest as we can.
So this is so important. Was it Dan? Was it you? Is it from? Yeah, is your name Dan? Sorry, I missed it. I just want to come back to you on this, because it seems to me that actually that there aren't in Bosnia or anywhere, there aren't three truths, and the journalist has just got to report the news and what people say. The problem in Bosnia and in everywhere else is not what journalists do. We know what to do. It's the editorial line. That's the problem. Can we give a microphone? Because this is really quite important for.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I agree with everything you said, but there are kind of two kinds of truth. There's like maybe like human rights. You are not allowed to kill someone. In Bosnia, it's not so obvious. You had a war, you know, and people thought that they had right to do evil things to other people. That's the truth. That shouldn't be debated. But you have to have a point. How do you approach the people that hate each other to persuade them that that's not true? So this is extreme example, and I really exaggerate. But just
it's not unique to Bosnia.
Yeah. But okay. I'm saying from my own situation, and we can expand. Everybody has their own stories in their own environment. I take this extreme example just to show that, in theory, there is an angle to the truth, and you report to that. You check your own angle, depending on your ideological whatever point of view, and then people decide. But now we have a problem that obvious truths are not truths anymore. And I mean, I don't want to if we have a president of the United States who says, don't trust media, don't trust what they say, trust me. And people trust him. Like there's 35% of people in America who trust him. So that's the problem we are dealing with as journalists. And all these ideas about business model and how that's important, we need all that. But we need to really start addressing the question that people are starting to distrust, as you said, the institution, the media, the politicians, everybody. They question things that should not be questioned. And we journalists, I believe, are really on the first line of defense of what's really fundamental truth.
But as journalists know what the truth is, but the point is that
we can reach the biggest audience. We are still, like most of media, still legacy media, they still have the biggest reach to the biggest audience, despite the social media and all that.
But we know that in countries of the Western Balkans, a lot of the media is under state control in one means or other. And not only now, not in Western Balkans, in Hungary, in Poland, in other parts of the EU as well.
Yeah. You have Brexit. I mean, you can tell us your story about how...
I wouldn't call it state control in Britain, but that's a different story. But in, you know, you can. I mean, we can certainly talk about Hungary and and Poland, where a lot of the media is. Okay, that's another question. Okay, let's have another round of 3 questions. Lady, just there, number 2 over there, okay? But the lady in blue here? Could we have the lady in blue here? Yeah, just here, this row here.
Hi, my name is Biljana and I'm from Bosnia, from debunking platform Raskrinkavanje. To connect to a colleague from Nezavisne novine, we deal with a specific problem. We deal with facts. We fact check everything. And whenever we do like some public service, some media that is connected to some party, and we debunk something, we are automatically paid by the other side. And that is a big problem, because the facts are, I don't know, there are no facts. It's silly to have to justify yourself for exposing facts. If some media said something untruthful, you have to justify yourself for that if you expose that.
Right.
And we don't know how to fight that.
Okay.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. Okay. There's a lady just over there, and the block on the right.
Hi, my name is Julia. I'm from Albania and I work as investigative journalist at the national television top channel. During these days, I rose in my mind only a question: how we can save investigative journalism? Because the question or the topic is that we prepare certain topics in terrain. Yeah? We go, we prepare the material, and then it is blocked. It is not seeing the light of publishing, of seeing a light of being broadcasted.
Is that your experience?
Because the politics and the business is trying to take control of the media in my country.
Is that your experience, that you do work and then it's not broadcast?
Yeah, I'm the winner of the first prize from the OSCE for investigative journalism and the winner of second prize from EU delegation in my country. And I've won these 2 important prizes for the topics that have been broadcasted. They don't know what is remained without being broadcasted and seeing the light of publishing.
All right, the commission is here. We're here. Tell us what. I'm not asking
there
for
are
names.
many
what sort
topics
of things are you talking? Just
left without the light of publishing.
Just tell us, without naming names or so, what sort of things are you talking about? Give us an example.
About a judge, for example.
I mean about what sort of things are not being...
About a judge that has falsified its notes, and today this judge is judging someone that has falsified
and Top Channel,
a document. This was never broadcasted.
Okay.
And I couldn't publish it because I have worked for the television where I've been paid.
Okay, and what do they tell you is the reason that they won't broadcast it?
So the question is, how can we save the investigative journalism? How can we broadcast this? So the 7th, 8th of the iceberg.
Okay.
I mean, yeah? In our country there are 800 online media. So one media for 4,000 people.
Okay.
And most of these are owned from businessmen.
Okay.
Yeah? And that have a certain target. We ask our colleagues and say, well, what kind of media? This media. And which is your aim? They said, we aim to tackle or to attack this institution.
Okay.
Yeah?
Fine. Okay, great. Well, I mean, if there's concrete examples, I'm sure that Mr. Hahn's people would love to hear about it, if only discreetly, so that they well armed when they go and talk to Albania's leaders. Okay, let's have the third question. Thank you very much.
Thank
you. Okay, the gentleman there in the white shirt. Yeah, you've got the microphone.
That's me.
Great.
Thanks. I feel that after yesterday's discussion about financial sustainability of media, one point might need to be reinforced, and that is also connected to what we were talking about, truth, right now. Namely, I think we should challenge the truth of markets that will take care of public interest, and that even though it is true that all media should have fair position in the market and equal rights, we should also find other ways of sustaining public interest in reporting, because markets are interested in money primarily, and media are not primarily about money, which is why we need to simply start challenging the notion that once we reach this ideal of the fair market, everything will be fine. Yesterday we discussed some ideas such as the crowdfunding approach. I think
what was that?
Crowdfunding.
Yes, okay.
When you ask people to give you money.
Yeah.
There are possibilities that lie with this idea. There are also limitations. I also think it's fair not to hold media responsible or accountable for providing money. It's difficult enough to be journalists, and public should be the one financing public interest in some way. I also owe you a comment from yesterday, if you remember, regarding the last year protest in Tirana. One of the reasons why we don't have a protest this year is not because problems got smaller. It's quite the contrary. It's maybe because we are a little bit less energetic, and it's also because some of the most vocal participants of the last year protest did not receive invitations for this year's event, or they received it at the very last moment. So I think it's important to say this.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. Right, well, those are kind of comments, but rather than questions in particular, but Credible, you obviously have something to say, so go ahead.
Yes, because I left something out when I was talking about public broadcasters in the region, and how actually the political elites try to control them. My expertise mainly lies in Kosovo and Albania and Macedonia, but it's the same story more or less. It's not, for politicians, public broadcasters are not only about control of editorial policy, but they're becoming kind of employment factory for their political clients in this patronage system of voter-politician relations. And it's not only limited in the public broadcasters anymore. There are politicians in Kosovo who can make a phone call and get you a job with private media. Because that's how much this power network over control is spread. In Albania, I'm so sorry to hear from the colleague, but in Albania there are lists of businessmen that no media can report about. They're untouchable. No one can report about them. And I know 3 of them at least. Now, this is the problem which is going back to the political dimension once again. And we have the recent case of the blatant political interference of the public broadcasters in Montenegro, and we are not satisfied with the reactions we've had from the EU about this case. This should have been a good precedent for a positive feeling that countries should be conditioned. Appropriate punishment measures should be introduced when such violations happen.
But do you think that the Commission's credibility is being undermined by what's happening at home, so to speak, in some EU countries anyway? Or is that not really
I think that that's not really an argument that I hear a lot in the region. No one will be talking about Mr. Orban in Hungary and say, oh, but the Commission doesn't really have an authority. I think that when the European institutions put a firm line on some issues, then there is progress, always. As part of the civil society, we've always been using the indirect advocacy to our politicians. We have Mr. Zbogar here, who was EU's representative in Kosovo, and who helped us a lot to send those messages around. But I'm afraid that the EU is not as firm when it comes to media independence as it is on other issues. which was perceived more hardcore to democracy, like election interference and so others. So I think that we need to be more harsh on some limits when it comes to such interference, and make some good examples out of them.
Sashka, do you think that's the same here in Macedonia? Do you think that the EU could be, the Commission could be kind of tougher when it comes to certain media?
I think it's the same everywhere. Look what's happening in Hungary, look what's happening in Poland, then the Western Balkan countries. We have, in the Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project, we lost 2 reporters in EU countries in the last 1 year. Daphne in Malta, Jan in Slovakia. And that is, okay, we thought, 1 year ago we thought that, you know, the days when it was unimaginable that somebody will kill a journalist in EU won't come. Well, here they are. And nobody does a damn thing. So yeah, I think the EU institution, not just the Commission, are very ignorant towards the freedom of press in general. Then propaganda. I mean, we have elections in May, right, in EU. What do you guys think it will happen there? It will be a massacre, disinformation, fake news. We do that job. We monitor, let's say, outpowers or domestic gangs who do produce propaganda. And they are preparing, and it will come. And we will have more Nazis and fascists and all kind of scumbags in the EU Parliament next year, more than ever. And that will not be good. So media are your natural partners. That's why this should be an alliance, not a request for support.
You mentioned, when you gave your initial talk, you mentioned Mr. Orban and Hungary, and then you mentioned a figure. Can you tell us how he's involved, or his friends are involved in Macedonia in particular?
Oh, they are involved.
Yes, but just tell us. I don't think everybody else knows exactly how that works. Could you just tell us so that we know?
Around May this year, Mr. Orban's friends, his political advisor and his other people, even people involved in the public broadcaster in Hungary, started a huge media buy-up in the Western Balkan countries. It started in Slovenia and then it passed in Macedonia. The connection was, of course, through Janez Janša and the more conservative party in the former ruling party here. And they bought 1 national TV station. Now they are opening internet TV station. And they have, I don't know how many, maybe more than 30. They're opening them every day. You know, it's like every day a new media. Orban consortium is like spreading. And the ones we know so far and we've investigated, so how they work, it's horrible. That's not even disinformation. I mean, that's a really, really mild word for that. And they rule the internet, most definitely. The TV station is also popular. They can do whatever they want to do. They have money. They don't care about content. They need like 20 people to rewrite the lies. Oh, they can get them in an hour and pay them in 2 hours. Okay, that's not a problem. Nobody knows where this money are coming from. Nobody knows where this money are going. Those media previously that Mr. Orban and his friends bought were used as a huge money laundering machines. Money were laundered there, and we cannot pretend that never happened. The same people who were facilitating money laundering are now blind, you know. Institutions do not work. Some people in the new government think that it's good to have friends on both sides. We don't agree with that, right? But there are some discussions about balancing. Oh, we cannot fight with everybody. You know, oh, he was doing a little bit of propaganda. He's still doing it. But can we find some ground? No, we can't. You know, there is no balance in that. So that's what we are facing with. And Mr. Orban's media are probably publishing, I was counting the last time in July, per day, 20 news outlets were publishing around maybe 3,000 articles. 3,000 articles. Okay. 3,000 articles of pure bullshit and stupidity and lies. And we have what? 3 articles per day, because we need to do the fact check. We need to do everything properly. We need time. So that's it. Content matters. And they win.
That's fascinating, because until now, we've known about the sort of Russian media offensive in the region. Now we have to think about the Hungarian media offensive, and what that means. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so who wants to talk next? Who wants to make a comment or okay, lady over there, please.
Hello, my name is Sofia Todorovic, Youth Initiative for Human Rights. Well, I have a question regarding young professionals and young people who should be engaged more in journalism and such, but in journalism as a professional journalism with all its principles and standards. Since you've been mentioning the decreased level of young people who are ready to get involved and to do journalism actually, and you mentioned the problems with safety in Balkans, the problems with the atmosphere in Balkans when you are maybe a young person who is involved in investigative journalism and you want to search for the information, and then you will deal with the problems such as political pressures, safety measures and things like that. So my question maybe for all of you is, do you think that all these independent media, even though it's not such a large number of these kind of medias, should they involve in their work more young people in general in order to empower them and to encourage them to get involved in this kind of journalism? Because with all these challenges that you mentioned, how do you expect that one young person will be, I don't know, will make a decision to do the proper journalism in the Balkans? So I think that at this conference we talked like such a little about young people, about how we should empower them and encourage them to be journalists in general, and how should we encourage them to do their work regionally, for example, and how we should transfer this kind of knowledge that people who are involved in journalism for maybe a larger number of years can transmit their knowledge and experience to them. So maybe this can also be one of the focuses in order to overcome all the challenges that we have mentioned.
Question about young people, okay. Second question, okay, gentleman there.
I'm Branko Čečan from Center for Investigative Journalism of Serbia. I'd like to point the attention to the fact that the European Union cannot reform and cannot change any of our countries. And it can help, it does help. The process itself, it's a great tool. But yet, in many of our captured states, things are going backwards. And we all painted into a corner. We're sitting ducks faced with institutions that don't protect us and whose prerogatives are basically taken away from them. So if we are to push forward and make things happen, we need serious and substantial reforms and help perhaps to push for them in rule of law and giving back the powers to the institutions. So once the huge issues of, I don't know, in Balkan Peninsula, I don't know, Kosovo or migrants when they come or whatever are basically fixed, we will then focus on rule of law. I think that it might be too late, and I think we should do it parallel to that, and we should push for it, and I think we need help, public recognition that this is happening, and it was recognized in strategy for the Balkans, for Western Balkans and so on, but that would be a tool, a weapon for ourselves to fix our problems. I can defend myself in court if the court works. Right now, when a courageous prosecutor appears in Romania, we're all excited like children because we haven't seen that in our society for years and years and years. We haven't seen the independent functioning of these apparatus to protect not just the ruling elites and so on, but also us, who are basically right now victims of smear campaigns, violence, whatever we said here. We haven't seen the true influence of citizens on political parties and movements to actually bring into legislation things that will at least partially protect the media space and the public sphere from fake news or whatever we discussed here, exactly because our systems are not functioning.
Okay.
So we would all benefit, in every citizen in every our country, but us also, from at least some tools to defend ourselves. That is something that we have to change, and something that you can help and does help, and maybe we should think about new ways to help us to fix
Have you got
things.
some suggestions you can tell Mr. Hahn now? Like, if you've got some suggestions, like how to help? Sorry?
Well, what public support would be okay when they come to our countries and support our leaders, which is excellent, wonderful, to support us too. And then when a specifically bad incident happens, and we start going to the streets and camping in front of prosecutors' offices and giving out leaflets in front of our parliaments, perhaps somebody from European delegation in our countries could appear and shake our hands. Nothing more than that at the beginning. And then we could talk about how to perhaps get support when we suggest to our political elites some kind of change that we see as a definite little space for us, and then we would put more of these little spaces and perhaps create something that would be excellent for both of us and European Union, because I don't think European Union wants another member like my country.
Okay, fine. You've got that? You've listened to okay, fine. Like, and then one more comment or question here. Oh yeah, lady just there, great.
Hello, I'm Jana Buzinovska, journalist in news portal in Macedonia. I'm listening Sashka especially, and I agree with her about content of the media. But just very short, there is another problem here, at least in Macedonia. Who is working as journalist? I think that now everyone who wants can be a journalist. Problem is that young people are not interested in journalism, because I'm not sure how many students there are now at university who are studying journalism. So I would like to ask colleagues there what they think about this issue. I don't know how it is in other countries in Western Balkans, who is working, who is journalist, but I know how it is here.
Okay.
Thank you.
But perhaps you'd like to give us a little, I mean, why do you think people don't want to be journalists, young people don't want to be journalists?
Salaries are one reason.
Yeah.
And why to study journalism if you can work as journalist with everything else?
Sorry, I don't understand, sorry.
You can work as journalist with other education.
Oh, you don't need to study journalism?
Yes.
Well,
yes.
it's true, I didn't study journalism, so...
No, but the situation is a little bit different.
Maybe, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Great, okay. Would you like to pick up on some of those things? Like, yeah, please go ahead.
I think what my colleague was trying to say, correct me if I'm wrong, is that yes, of course, people who work are not journalists, they're just copy-pasting stuff and receiving stuff from other people, just republishing things, and yes, salaries are low, but those are not real reporters' jobs, okay? We need actual journalists to do the job, and we don't have them, and then now we are back to your question, how can we support the young people? Well, we can only, yes, they need to be trained, but they need to be in the newsroom. They need to work. They need to have a job. We must have something to offer. I mean, what? They are going to be trained for years and then do what? Something else? I've seen so many people in which the EU had invested in trainings, in extensive stuff, and they are not in media because there is no room in media for anybody who want to do this job. That's why independent newsrooms need support. And somebody mentioned something about the truth, and then suddenly, you know, everybody's upset. Why are we so upset? Why is the truth such a big word? It's true, it's okay. Our job is to seek the truth. Idealism, okay? The Commission, if they want to support the young people, if they want to support at the same time independent press, they should support the journalism driven by the power of idealism, okay? And that means a little bit changes in the programming they do.
Okay, Milica, we haven't heard too much from you, so please tell us about Serbia and position there and young people.
I need to say something a little bit different, because in my experience, this is only for Serbia. Most of the people that I know in independent media, investigative independent media, are actually young. Most of them are young. Since these trainings that we are having every year, majority are not majority. I think everyone is young students or young fellows, and we are trying very hard. We are working with all of them, we are trying very hard to keep them, but we have another problem. We are not able to pay every young people that want to work with us, and on the other hand, we have that ethical issue. We don't want to have a free labor. We don't want to do that. And there is a problem that you have people who would like to work with us. Since we cannot pay them, they are actually going to those not very good but very rich media because you have to live from something. You need to have something to eat at the end of the day. So I think that is very connected with those questions about the truth, because my opinion is that we have a little bit bigger problem than just media. We have problems, I think, in our societies, and those needs to be a parallel process of resolving that. You cannot just fix the media situation without fix it in a society.
Okay, Conrad, do you want to pick up?
Just briefly, I mean, I do subscribe to what Sasha was saying earlier, that journalists are made in the newsroom. But I think that we are being a bit too much dependent on the path and the history of journalism here. We need to consider a bit the new media and what can we do to get back to the engaging youth. I can pick up a few good examples when youngsters would just take their iPhone and produce a small short documentary on YouTube and be able to change local policies, municipal policies, for a problem and so. And I think that we need to explore this more. I do agree journalists are made in the newsroom, but just like the all negative phenomena are using the new media, we need to encourage youngsters to use the new media, not because they will be paid to do that. Because when I was a journalist, I was paid peanuts. You know, we did it because it was a prestigious thing to do. And now that prestige is gone with all the attacks of the politicians over journalists. No one wants to be a journalist anymore. But we can get that prestige back through this decentralization and through this encouraging youngsters to actually use the new media and be independent citizen journalists. On top of what you were saying, and that is...
It's about perspective. It's not about, oh, come here, we're going to pay you money now. No, no, no. They need to see a perspective. There must be sustainability in that market, okay? Why would the young people stay on? Where would they go? Why, we need them, we need to keep them, not just to take them and then, okay. I mean, young people are coming in our newsroom too. We work only with young people, and most of them are females, you know, women. So, they are not paid, but eventually they must be. Or they won't stay, so we will train them, we'll invest in them, and then what? Oh, it's okay, sorry, I was working like this 10 years ago. Well, it didn't last 20 years, right? You look good.
All right, thank you very much. Before we go on, I just want to say I would like to welcome and to announce that we've got Robert Popovsky here, the Macedonian Minister of Communication, Accountability and Transparency. I've got your title correctly, right? Great. Because yesterday people were saying, well, a lot of this should be directed, politicians should hear us. So, well, at least we have a Macedonian minister in charge of transparency and communication and accountability here who will listen, okay? Thank you very much and welcome. Okay, the next one, a lady just here, then a gentleman there, and then a gentleman there. Okay, that's three.
Thank you very much, Radka Baceva from the European Broadcasting Union. I'm wondering if yesterday in the panel on business models, there was a discussion about disruptive innovation.
Okay.
About disruptive innovations, because we are now in a new time where we witness that the journalism is disrupted by innovations. We have enormous flow of cheap pieces of information which are disrupting our business, and maybe a recommendation to Commissioner Hahn that we could support actually innovation in the media sector, and we could support establishment of media startups, and even in the field of public service media, because if we do not disrupt ourselves, someone else will disrupt ourselves. I wanted also to say that this year we are implementing a big project for the Western Balkans, which is supported by the European Commission, and it is a good tool for support of public service media in the region here.
What does it do?
It has 9 layers. It supports public service media in management reforms, in production of investigative journalism, in production of programs for youth, etc.
Great. But that's some of the things that you were talking about. We need help. Some of it is being done. And,
it is a very meaningful project, and I think that such projects mean a lot for the region, and it should be continued. And I wanted also to say that this time the forum is much better because there is much more room for discussions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Okay. No, I think we had a second person already. Did I give? Okay, you and then you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, George Stamkowski. I'm a cross-media producer in the UK and the Balkans. I just want to comment that there's never going to be, I think everyone will agree, that there's never going to be a silver bullet to the truth. It's going to always be a constant battle between good and evil, truth and lies. And it's going to be a process. We're not going to sit down here, analyze the problem, implement the measures and solve it. It'll be a constant process. And in that process, there's, I think, got to be 3 ingredients. There's got to be support for independent journalism, even though in the past, here in Macedonia and in other countries, those who have received support from, for example, the Soros Foundation have been regarded as traitors, sellouts, etc., for taking the shilling. That has to be in the mix. There has to be continued support for that. There has to be support for media education so that people become media literate and train people to sift through the facts and compare different sources and not be easily manipulated. And thirdly, it's an area that's been touched on by all the speakers, I think there has to be support for citizens' journalism, because that's the trend in many areas, from TripAdvisor, reviewing hotels, etc. It's user-generated content and user-generated knowledge, if you like. Obviously, that's open to manipulation as well, but you know, if people are educated and user-generated content and reporting is moderated, I think it will add some spice into the mix and be a powerful weapon on the side of truth.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for your comment. And then, yes, it was you, right.
Mogens Blikker Bjerregaard, President of the European Federation of Journalists. Listening to what you have said about the payment, I'm sorry, I have to come back to what I stressed yesterday about fixing this problem, because you will never get a good situation before you have fixed that problem. And you always ask us to give some demands to the EU and Mr. Hahn when he's here. Provide us with possibilities to make this social dialogue in this region, because you will never fix it before you get that. And one comment about who can be a journalist and who should be considered as such. I warn you to make such a consideration, because you give a wonderful tool in hands of authoritarians.
Authoritarians.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. If you do that. This is a free title. Everybody that can work as a journalist should, of course, be able to do that. And one final thing, about when you talk so much about fake news, I also urge you to call it what it really is about. It's about propaganda, it's about lies, it's about disinformation. When you every time you use the wording fake news, you are playing the game of some of the big leaders that we have seen using this, misusing this. So please, let's call things what it is, because it's not a new thing. We have seen it for decades, for centuries. Okay. Call it what it is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. There was kind of 2 comments, but there was one specific question about whether there had been any discussion yesterday about disruptive innovations. Did you pick up any of that? Was there
very little, unfortunately, yes.
All right. Okay, well, so not much, sorry. Okay, fine. And as I say, the other two interventions were really comments, which I think we've absorbed. So we've still got a little bit of time left. Who'd like to be next? Hello? I can't see anyone. There's somebody right at the back there. Yep.
Hi, my name is Dragan Kremer. I come from Open Society Foundation, Serbia. But I would much rather speak as a citizen of one of Western Balkans countries and as a former journalist. But as you know, once a journalist, always a journalist. So I couldn't agree more with what Sasha Cvetkovska was saying yesterday and today. And let's put it bluntly, as we started speaking really open.
Good.
Either there are politicians here or not. We should, call the problems by the real name. It is fine giving grants and financial and other kinds of support to investigative journalists and independent media, but it's a painkiller, essentially. It is easing up the problem at the final end. If you really mean to solve the problems, you should go upstream to the very source. So, let's say fake news issue. Yes, media literacy is fine, but it's a long and a slow process of making people media literate. Meantime, the situation is getting worse as we speak about it. So, let's start with agreeing probably on the fact that our dear presidents, I'm talking about all the Western Balkan countries, our prime ministers, state secretaries, probably with the exception of Mr. Zaev, not because we are in Macedonia, but because he is the latest addition to the bunch and still stands a fair option of proving he's part of the solution and not part of the problems. But basically, our top executive power representatives are lying both ways, both to EU officials when they speak about the progress made in our respective countries concerning media freedoms and freedom of expression, and they are also lying to us as citizens when they speak about EU progress reports. We are lucky to have, to some extent, the real insight through independent media and some civil society organizations. So probably EU officials, if they want really to achieve some progress on these issues, should really take a much more decisive stand. Like in Montenegro, say there is a strict deadline for the investigation in shooting up this journalist. Or in Serbia, if top officials are bad-mouthing officially at their press conferences, if they are bad-mouthing journalists by name and cursing the independent media outlets, they are declaring open hunting season on these media outlets and these journalists. So in order not to have this year, next time, not to have more journalists beaten up or shoot at, God forbid worse, not to have this on your hands, you have to act. You have to do something. And I'm glad Mr. Juda has taken notice yesterday about lack of Serbian participation this year as compared to very vocal and very visual stand last year. So the slogan, the hashtag EU do more, if I need to explain, is not literally only do more of the same. It's like do more in terms do better, try something else, try something new to resolve the problems. It's not just about increasing financial support. It's about treating independent media, investigative journalism that you are supporting, treat them as equal partners and not only the top politicians and as your only default partners that you trust face value. Okay. Don't take whatever they tell you and report, don't take it for granted.
Good.
We know they're lying.
Well, I mean, the Commissioner has heard what you've had to say, and maybe he will react in his speech. Okay, who would like to be next? A lady there.
Thank you. I'm Elida Zvivari, editor-in-chief in Portal in Macedonia. I would like to know, what my colleagues think about the conclusion of this workshop. We're talking about the problems that we are facing and probable solution, but does anybody have a plan after this? What will happen with the conclusions? We gather around every time and we speak about our problems and what to do next, but I would like to know the concrete idea or the project that will help us to raise our outreach. Thank you.
Okay, and let's have one more. Somebody, one more person? No? Okay. What about this, okay, conclusions. What are you going to do with the conclusions? What have you learned? What can be done?
It's not what we are going to do, what the Commissioner will do.
Okay.
That's the question.
Okay, fine. Okay.
What we will do is we'll write them down in the language that will be understood and try to make them as concrete as possible.
Okay.
And then try to follow them up next year.
Does this work?
So we have some kind of a contingency of this event.
Do you think this type of format and bringing everyone together, does it work? Is it useful?
I think it is so far.
Great. Okay.
We need to explore it a bit more. And we need to make sure that whatever is discussed here, there will be a stream and a channel to stream it afterwards. So we don't meet every year and discuss and then agree and have fun, but actually we do something in due time.
Great, okay. Milica, do you want to respond to that? Okay, all right. Okay, we've still got like a few minutes. There's a lady back there.
Hello, Maja Stojanovic, Civic Initiative Serbia. I would like just a very broad observation about the conference. We had 3 panels and 3 streams of discussions yesterday. One was about regional cooperation, and I would like to say that all the people here are actually very good in regional cooperation. We have independent media present here, which are very broadly covering the regional issues, and probably each of us here can give you a very good sightseeing of all regional capitals and even small cities. Second one was media professionalization, and I would like to add that all the media present here are very professional. We have issues with the media not being here, which are not professionals and covered up or supported by our governments. We have a problem that it's very hard to fight the media unprofessionalism, which is very, very covered by our governments. And on that issue, very concrete plea to Mr. Johannes Hahn: if he comes to Serbia, please don't do the only interview with the news agency Tanjug, which does not exist by our law. On the third issue, which is brought yesterday, it was about business development issues and business structures of media. And I would like to say just a congratulations to all of the media present. We are all, and they are all independent media, which are, I'm not knowing what it's worth, being very capable to still exist from 90s, or being able to, in this media scene in the last 5 years, being very successful in independent journalism and other things. So we need to discuss the context, and my concrete request for the next conference, which will happen maybe in Sarajevo or Belgrade, even better, because we have a lot of problems there. So to have 3 streams. One is how to together fight the money flows toward the non-independent and non-professional media in our countries. The second one is how to do better regulation and regulative agencies work in our countries, which should be the main things that are actually regulating everything, and it's a part of rule of law. And the third stream should be attacks on journalists. So we need to find, we together in the region with the European Union, a common idea how to fight this from inside and outside to actually make a context much better. Thank you.
Great. Perhaps you should write a memo to the Commission to summarize
I will be
that.
glad.
Good. Well, I'm suggesting that you do that. Okay, fine. Please go ahead. Here, sorry, gentleman here, sorry. From Montenegro.
Just to add for this, what colleague said, what is good point, what is something what we discussed yesterday with Ms. Cavalera from Brussels.
Who's here, so she can
okay.
She can hear you.
Very good. Just again to repeat, this what European Commission did in past time is of course very important. Progress reports, statements, bilateral talks with our governments, politicians, but it is clear that it is not enough if we speak about protection of journalists and investigative reporting. What means the European Commission should start with some more action. And I think this idea, because this dictatorship in the region, so-called soft dictatorship, they are working not because strong leaders, because army which exists behind them. What means that people who is in parliament, who is in prosecutor, in judiciary, prosecutor, judges, who abuse their position, their profession to attack journalists, to don't protect them, to don't investigate, they should be put on the list of sanctions. They cannot move to European Union, their family members. We already have that, I said yesterday, we already have that experience in Albania, and I think it is one of the models which it is something what we really need, because if we continue, European Commission, if continue with just progress report, just statements, which we will have same situation, physical attacks again without a real investigation.
Okay. Thank you very much. Well, I think that the comment about party army kind of overlaps really with what Krenar was saying about party armies in one way or another within the media. And what was the phrase you used? Media employment factories?
Yeah, employment factories for the politicians.
Exactly. Great. Okay. Okay. There's somebody there at the back.
Hi, I'm Mirko from Montenegro. I would just like to share our experience with EU delegation and part of a regional cooperation that we had. I work in a public broadcaster and we have investigative department. So maybe this model we had could be inspiration for people around here. So we created investigative department thanks to the EU delegation support and of course thanks to the cooperation with independent production from Serbia. So it's insider production. So we created something that could be maybe a model for many different countries, and I believe that such kind of business models and cooperation could be useful in the region in general.
Repeat your names, everyone can hear you.
Mirko Bošković from Public Broadcaster from Montenegro.
So there's someone, okay, and then the lady over there. Sorry, sometimes it's a bit hard to see because I've got the spotlights in my eyes here. So yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Samira Lučkin from Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina, from Yabihev organization. I just would like to suggest, we always speak about what EU should do or should not do for us. Next conference should include panel what we did to change our situation in every segment, idea. Journalism, editorials, media ownership, media owners and everything, because we also need to show that we know to make some progress as well. So I would suggest that kind of panel next time. Thank you.
Great, that's a great idea. And I would like to add, I think, I mean, obviously investigative journalism is important, but it's not the only type of journalism which is important in changing societies. A lot of just regular, ordinary journalism is lacking here in the region and in much of the rest of Europe. So, fine, we've got a couple of minutes. I don't know if anyone wants to react. We've had 3 things. Do you want to react to any of that? Otherwise, we'll take advantage, and if there's anybody else who wants to make a comment listened to by the Commissioner and his team and the Minister, we've got 2 or 3 minutes left. No? Come on, it's like this is your literally last chance, like last minute, last chance. Otherwise, I'm going to hand back over to Connie. So no one? 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay, go ahead. One. Sold to the gentleman. Last question. Sold to the gentleman over there.
I just, if we could ask the panel for a quick comment on the importance of and the power of citizens journalism and user-generated content.
Fine, because we didn't pick that up before. Citizen journalism.
Well, I mentioned it briefly. I think that it's still underexplored in the region, and there are no good incentives supporting that. There are some rare, very good stories, and which have really good impact, and definitely an avenue to be explored.
Okay. Do you know anything about talk about citizen journalism from? Go ahead.
I agree. We are talking about the things that we don't know much about it, so I cannot have a statement on it. I think we need to explore it more. I think it has a great potential. I would say that much.
Okay.
I'm not that optimistic. I mean, we have illiterate journalists, even worse audience. Media cannot moderate their comments on Facebook. Imagine what will happen when citizens will start sending their stories. I mean, we already have a lot of troubles with polarization on social media. Every voice demands to be taken equally seriously, okay?
Yeah.
Everybody. And citizen journalism is currently really not the thing we need. and we cannot afford ourselves to invest in such operations.
Perfect. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, well, I would like to take advantage to say, first of all, thank you very much to you. Thank you very much to everybody else who's participated in panels. Thank you very much to everybody who's here, and of course to Mr. Hahn, his team, and Commissioner, Macedonian government for hosting us, and Commission for hosting us, and thank you very much. And I'm now going to hand back to Connie. And we will.
Well, thank you very much, and also to Tim, who's done a more than marvelous job. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
esteemed colleague. And with that, thank you for having been here. I must say, I've never seen a commissioner spend that much time, even if he's been hosting or co-hosting any kind of conference, in the room where everything happened. So I can assure you, it seems at least, we cannot know what you think, but we can see what you do. So there is certainly a very, very strong personal commitment by Johannes Hahn. Also, I would like to give a compliment on the fly, because we did have all these interpreters, and thank you very much for the grand job that you did yesterday, but you all are speaking in a language which might not be the first language that you also write in, so great compliment of the level of discussions that we've seen here in a language, again, that might not be your first language. Mind you, that's also a sign of the EU. We all try to talk in a language that everybody can agree on, whether it's French, whether it's English, and sometimes even a little bit of German or Austrian thrown in. But the most important thing is that the points get across. I'm very sure that your points have gotten across. So, Johannes Hahn, I would love to invite you to come up with your final remarks after having heard everything that was spelled out. And then after you finished, we will have another look at our narrative that has been playing out here. So, ladies and gentlemen, give him a big hand, the EU Commissioner for Neighbourhood Policy and Enlargement Negotiations.
Yeah, thank you very much, and also from my side, good morning to everybody. In particular, I would like to welcome Robert Bobowski, the Minister for Communication, Accountability and Transparency. Immediately I would like to use the opportunity to announce that if we are organizing this next year again, I will sort of say take the advice or the comment I have heard yesterday, also to include or to let politicians participate in our conference, or at least to have panels, because I suppose in all these countries we have ministers being in charge of communication, of the media, etc. And I think it's important to have an exchange, may I say, also with those who are in charge. And this leads me immediately, and I'm grateful that I could listen to the conclusions from all your panel discussions and your thoughts and your comments. May I say I'm a little bit scared that there is apparently the idea there's only one truth. I think we should be modest. A society, so to say, a real society consists of many, many truths. And what I don't like to see in any kind of society is a kind of truth police or taste police which finally decides who has the truth or who is, so to say, following the one and only truth, and who is, so to say, departing from the real truth. So my understanding is, I have heard a lot about independent media. That's of course important, but I would like to add pluralistic and independent media. So this is what counts, what makes a society, a real society, to have a wide range of opinions. If you complain about Orban, okay, you can complain. The others complain about, as we have heard, what's the guy, Open Society founder, Mr. Soros. Yeah? So there are complaints there and there. But what we should guarantee is that everybody has the opportunity in a society to raise his or her voice and to be heard. And this is what makes the European Union, for what we are working. And to be honest, I'm not naive. I'm in politics for more than 40 years. I was in charge in my previous dossier for all the European regions. I'm now in charge for the eastern neighborhood, for the southern neighborhood, for the enlargement candidates. I have met many, many politicians, and in a way they are all similar, and I'm one of them. But I think we have to face reality. If we try, and I try, to improve the living conditions here in the region, to make the country more ready to join the European Union, to improve the economic situation, to guarantee plurality, independence, freedom of expression, independence judiciary, all this is not something which happens from one day to the other. It's also, and this is why I'm grateful that one of the panels was dealing with education. And to be honest, it doesn't start with the education or training of journalists. It already starts in school with a proper education. And I just met people from a think tank currently based in Thessaloniki, which, with the support of the European Union, have worked, I think, with 80 historians to produce history books for the region or about the region, trying to be objective, to inform about, so to say, the situation, the history of the region, trying to avoid that in each country of the region there are history books of, so to say, telling a totally different story about one and the same event. Probably the only thing which, so to say, is the same in all the books is the date of the event. But, so to say, the content, the assessment of an event might be very, very different. And if we are not able to overcome all this, and this is why I have spoken yesterday about this still existing ethnic borders, belongings, etc., the societies in these regions won't make progress. And therefore, we need, so to say, a public sphere where people are active, where people are vocal, and of course, media are the core elements of such a public. But I really would like, and maybe this could be a topic for next year's conference, to face a little bit more realism, what can be done on a short, on a medium-term perspective in order to change gradually and to improve the situation in the region. Sometimes I had the feeling you have spoken about an ideal world, may I say almost an utopia, which should be created. But this is not realistic. This is not possible. We have to evolve the situation here in the region. And in a way, we are in a transition period which finally should lead to the full accession to the European Union. And I was spoken yesterday, and not only yesterday, but at all possible occasions, that the enlargement process is about a process and not about negotiations. Not about negotiations of aligning with the acquis communautaire of the European Union. It's about really implementing what is, so to say, what are our values, what is, so to say, our spirit about plurality, respecting individual rights, freedom of expression, everybody should pursue his own interests, should follow, so to say, his talents, her talents. It's about the independence of the judiciary. We have to build confidence of the judiciary here in the region. There is no experience on that. This is not something we have to, which is there automatically. Here in this country we will have a referendum in 13 days, and the big issue is the turnout rate. I think in a mature democracy the turnout rate should not be the issue. The issue should be the result, but not the turnout rate. Because in a mature democracy everybody should be aware and should at least exercise the minimum he or she can contribute to democracy. And that means to cast his or her vote, to participate in it. And this is what counts, where I expect a strong support by the media, to strengthen democracy on a broad basis, to entrench democracy in society. And this also means to depart from this black and white thinking, which I have witnessed today again. The world is fortunately more nuanced than black and white. This is, by the way, one of the challenges I believe in a more digital world, that everything is thinking either in yes or no. This is not the society I'm fighting for, and I hope and I'm sure this is shared by you. So we have to work how we can really root in the Balkan societies, like in all other societies around the globe, so to say, the DNA of democracy, which means everybody can stand up, can say his or her opinion without being afraid to be in one or the other way punished, sanctions or whatsoever. And this is what counts, where I expect your support and our joint effort how to achieve this step by step. And once again, I'm not naive about the political situation in the region, but I have to work with the elected representatives in this country. These are my main interlocutors. Okay, one can say it's up to all of us, and in particular all of you, you are the citizens in this region, to change the situation. And again, we have to think about how to gradually improve the situation and to change what is criticized by you. Corruption is one of the big issues in the region, no doubt about it. And in all the countries we have a proper legislation against the fight of corruption. But it's about implementation. It's about how it is implied, who is brought to court, who is sentenced, what are the consequences, what are the sanctions. And this is exactly what we as European Union, as a Commission, are assessing. The track record in changing the situation. And of course, we cannot enforce one or the other individual case. I think if you take rule of law seriously, you cannot say there's a deadline when a certain case has to be prosecuted, has to be investigated. But be reassured, we are looking at the performance of each country when it comes to prosecute criminal cases, other forms of misusing, etc. And as long as this is not at the level and where we don't feel more guarantees that, so to say, the whole development is leading to an irreversible stage, we are not ready to accept a new member state in the European Union. And this is what I think should be our joint challenge, our joint task, to improve the situation with all our different means. And I give you an example. We have, or you have spoken a lot, and I think I'm grateful that this element is, so to say, part of such a conference, the economic situation of media. I'm pushing a lot to create a regional economic area here in the region, because the current market situation is very fragmented. And this means that a lot of potential is still untapped. And I'm not talking not about the immediate economic so to say, effects, but if there would be a regional economic area of more than 80 million participants, this would have also a different effect on international companies to become active in the region. If, so to say, a lot of rules dealing with doing business are in a way harmonized between the countries. So it becomes more so to say, feasible for international companies and more attractive to become active here in the region. And if you have more international companies, I'm sure that they would have to advertise their products, their goods, their services. And this should contribute to more, so to say, opportunities for media outlets. That should reduce the dependency of one or the other owner being usually close to leading politicians. This is, look, these are, so to say, some of the correlations which are in a way linked to each other and which we should support for many, many purposes. And of course, another element is, and you discussed it intensively, and I'm grateful for, so to say, improving the conditions for public broadcasters. I'm deeply convinced public broadcasters are the core element of media freedom in a society, provided the working conditions are there, guaranteeing the independent work of the journalists and at the same time safeguarding the national financial support by the public. And we have concepts, we have examples. Something has, by the way, created in Ukraine. You might be surprised. They adopted a law where they defined that a certain percentage, 0.4 of the national GDP, should be provided to the national broadcaster. And they also guaranteed the independence of the journalists. So even the representatives of the broadcaster sector in Ukraine were surprised about, so to say, the magnitude or the, so to say, the generosity, if you like, of this law. The downside of it, after it was adopted, was and is that it was immediately breached by the government itself because they halved the budget, although it was stipulated in the law. So there's a good example, but there's also a bad example. What I simply want to express, there are ideas, there are concepts, and we have a lot of experience, and we will and we are working with governments to implement, to provide such conditions in each country. But public broadcast, and this is something you have to discuss amongst yourselves, they have to, so to say, to expand not only to the traditional, so for instance, TV and radio programs, they also have to include social media activities and things like that, because also here the variety of opportunities has increased. It's about a pragmatic result-oriented cooperation between you and us in order to improve gradually the situation in each of your countries. And to a certain extent, we have to find tailor-made approaches in order to address the specific deficiencies and shortcomings in the different countries. But what we need, and what I really ask you, is to be realistic in the way what can be achieved within the next couple of months, within the next couple of years, and not to create what Aldous Huxley has said, a brave new world. A brave new world, unfortunately or fortunately, if I think about Huxley, doesn't exist and should not exist, at least in the way he has described it. So I think we are sitting in the same boat. Maybe we have to discuss not really the direction, but what could be the next port which we can, so to say, to which we can navigate in order to replenish our so to say, content. And this is something I really ask you to reflect in the course of next year. So when we will come together, we have not yet decided about the venue, but I would really like to have another event, because then I believe there should be a guarantee that this kind of event will continue, even if I'm not any longer in charge of this dossier. But it's a work which will not be fulfilled within one mandate. It's work in progress, but we all have to be committed. We all know what we would like to have at the end, provided we believe in many different truths, but I assume this is the case here. If this is, so to say, our common understanding, we can achieve a lot. But we have to face reality, we have to be patient, but also passionate in order to achieve our common goal. If this is the case, I am sure that many things are achievable. So thank you once again for joining us for this conference, but I would like not to finish without saying thank you to my team in Brussels, here in Skopje, to many supporters which finally have helped to arrange this. And by the way, I have asked my people, according to our understanding, really everybody has been invited who was invited last year. We even tried to extend the list of people whom we can invite. So don't hesitate to provide us with further addresses of people which we should invite next year. I am an advocate of pluralism, of free speech, and this means everybody has the right and should come and should talk and discuss with us. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Hahn, thank you so much for your commitment, and of course we would hope that you're still around next year in your function, but as we all know, 2019 is again a year of change in the EU. We're going to have a new EU president, we're going to have elections to the parliament, but thank you very much for your and your team's work to put forward the issues at heart. Thank you so much. And I don't want to keep you, because I know that you need to run. The only thing is, ladies and gentlemen, you know that we try to make it interactive. Everybody has the app on their iPhones, and you will actually get an invitation to fill out a feedback form, because, of course, third time round, we want to even make it better than this year, so we would like your input. Please fill out the feedback forms. You'll be reminded on the app. And last but not least, you know, I started yesterday talking about the region where I come from. from, which is the Rhineland, and said in the third time round it's going to be part of the DNA. Well, that's what's going to happen with the EU Western Balkans Media Days. Thank you very much for having been there. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
I will be there still next year. I will be there still next year because we will organize it in September, and my office expires by the end of October.
Well, we're happy. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Sorry, I didn't point out in my...